Hey everyone, I'm creating 15 cards today. They're all birthday cards and they are using scraps and leftover pieces from my stash. And what I'm trying to do here is use a couple of really pretty pattern papers with some white elements and maybe some shimmer paper or some gold and silver and some shapes just to build a little bit of a collage with a focal stamp. Now I'm using the MFT Pure Innocence stamps today, and I think I use a few different ones. I don't think they're still creating these. I'm not completely sure, but they seem to have had quite a few of them go through their clearance recently. And I have a few of them in my stash. I absolutely love them. I've tried to go out to a bunch of different craft stores and find anything that they still have in stock because they are the perfect size to add a cute little element to a really basic card using scraps. My collage skills are not great, so this is me trying to use up what I have, but also practice. Now, what I'm doing here is I have this gorgeous paper with the little stars on it, as well as the orange, and I had some blue squares. So I'm looking through all these little Ziplocs on my desk, and I'm just grabbing a few things that I think would work together. I'm counting how many of them I have, and I'm putting them into a Ziploc so I can put them aside for when I complete the project. Now's the time when I'm now pulling them out to actually create the cards for today. You will see more videos like this on my channel over the next few months because I think I created 10 or 12 little bags of elements that I'm going to turn into cards, and we will see what I create out of those as we go. I've only prepared a few of them so far. Now, when I created these little packages, I did not glue together anything. I did not take a photo. So this is me trying to figure out what on earth did I create the first time and how am I going to put these together to work in a way that really showcases not only the pattern papers, but a little bit of layering and then this little stamped element on top. In the end, I managed to recreate it pretty well. And I've got this little girl who I've been using throughout the creation just as a little placeholder. In the video today, I'm going to show you how I do some of my copic colouring, and I'm going to share some hints and tips about how I do that in a way that means you can match the copic colouring to the paper, not colour and then find the pattern papers to match, if that makes sense. Now, I am a bulk card maker. I very rarely would create one card. I often do them in bundles, and 15 cards is probably, it's not one of my bigger projects, but if I'm creating something that has copic colouring and lots of little elements here to glue together, then it's probably the perfect amount to get me into my crafting zone and then get multiple cards at the end of it. You'll see here that I'm using a combination of some leftover craft foam behind this orange element, but behind the white, I layered that up using some of my scrap cardstock and leftover pattern papers. So anything where it's an offcut or something that I don't think I could turn into a card, I put into that little container in the top left, and I use that instead of craft foam to layer behind if I'm trying to flatten something out or if I want to step something up off the page. I tend to find if I use craft foam itself, double-sided foam tape, that it's got a pretty high elevation and it makes things stand up too much. Whereas a few pieces of cardstock gives you a little bit of shadow around an element without having it create too much bulk, especially with these cards where we're putting quite a few layers on top of each other. Now you can see here from a previous project where I must have put something on an angle across a card and then I've chopped off the ends. I'm using all those leftovers as a higgledy-piggledy complete mess behind this rectangle. No one's ever going to see it. It's nice and flat. And you can see here that when I add this, it just creates this little shadow around the edge, which makes it much nicer to look at when you're creating a card with some elements and trying to make sure that you're creating a bit of interest. Now, I just stopped doing my voiceover and went back to the beginning of the video to double check the footage and see what the design looked like in my original plan. And the funny part is it was a horizontal card, not a vertical card, or landscape rather than portrait. So it turns out if you put all the elements into a little Ziploc, you can shuffle them around how you like when you start creating the card, and you can come up with something pretty cool, even if it's a little different than you originally intended. Now that I've got all the card layers sorted, and you'll notice that I'm working on a panel right here. It is a 5 1/4 by 4 inch panel, and I've not attached it to a card base just yet. But with all of those created and ready to go, I'm now starting to work on the little die cuts from my favorite things. And you can see on here, I've got the little girl in her little winter outfit with her scarf and her hat. I've got the little farmer girl. I think she's a farmer girl. She's in gumboots and she's got a big hat on, and then the pineapple one. And I'm just running through here doing them bulk style. So I've got a couple of these little pineapples. I'm practicing colouring them in. I like to do things really, really fast. I'm not an expert colorist at all, but I do find playing with Copic markers to be really, really fun. What I generally do is I'll either put down a base layer of the lightest colour so that I've got some ink spread out, then I'll add some little flicks from the sides with a medium colour, and then I'll normally go over it with the lightest colour again just to blend it all out. Now, I use a Sandy Olnock hex chart for my Copics. You can see it up in the top of my screen. I've deliberately zoomed in so that I'm not showing the full hex chart, because that is something that you can purchase from Sandy's site. I will put a link below to where you can get it from. It only costs a few dollars, and what I've done is I've printed it out on my laser printer, and I've printed it straight onto Nina Solar White cardstock, so that when I colour it in, it gives me a pretty true representation of what those colours will look like when I stamp out my little elements. I tend to use Nina Solar White for anything that I am going to colour in because it holds up really, really well with the alcohol inks. With my ink pad, I normally use my MFT ink pad. Versafine Black is one of my favourites, but it's not good for Copic colouring, so I normally use my MFT. Again, I'll put links below to everything that I've used. Now, I have not captured all of the colours that I've used for my colouring today. I have had feedback that people like to know what the colours are because it's helpful reference. So I will try and do a better job of maybe putting the lids on the surface so that you can see them moving forward. But it takes a ton of time to make notes of them and write them all down and then add them all into the video. And honestly, for me, I just pick up whatever colours I think make sense and then work from there. With the skin tones, I've been trying to do lots of different skin tones. Australia is a very diverse country, and where I donate my cards, it's helpful for them to have lots of little elements, especially if it's people that have different skin tones, because it represents Australia, and especially if they're being used for kids. In Australia, it's great for them to see diversity and representation in the images. Now, I, again, am not very good at Copic colouring. It is not really my forte, but you'll see that I'm trying out lots of different skin tones and colours, and in today's cards, there's a bit of a mixture. Now, for these, I'm literally just going to glue these on top of the element, and it's kind of the highlight of the card, and I really love how these have turned out. I have decided though that the blue dress is a little bit matchy-matchy with the square behind. So what I'm going to be doing now is these absolutely gorgeous little, winter, like rugged up for in the snow characters. And you'll see in the top left-hand side that I'm using these happy birthdays that were from, I don't know what paper pack, but I've got one in red, one in blue, one in grey, one in orange. They're all in different colours, and so I thought it would be super fun to actually colour in these little characters and highlight the colour of the happy birthday. So your inspiration can come from anywhere. The elements on here with the orange, green and blue, which is part of that star paper, is definitely going to be the basis of a lot of this, but you will see once I've coloured all of these in with these different colours that I can line them up and just balance that pop of colour from the happy birthday with the element of the coloured in image. Now, I'm not sure how much of this I'm going to show. I might skim this forward a little bit or go super, super fast, but colouring in these items is just so much fun. I couldn't do it all day, every day. Couldn't be an illustrator as a job. I would just send myself crazy, but there is something to be said for matching up colours and just practicing with these, trying to get the colour combinations together, because when you succeed, it is super, super satisfying to line these up on top of the other completed card components. So for me, I really enjoyed it. I know that colouring and spending a lot of time colouring is not for everyone, and a lot of people that love to watch my channel do love using pattern paper and chopping up paper and creating cards. So if you do not enjoy this part, I completely understand. Apologies, I am losing my voice. So if it goes a little bit croaky, then please forgive that. Now, one of my other tips is I often include denim in whatever I'm colouring, or jeans or some kind of neutral. Now, it can be the blue denim or sometimes black denim, but what that means is you can get quite a few of the elements done really simply, and then you can add those pops of color to the parts of the design that allow for it. So in this case, it's kind of the gloves or the scarf or the boots or the hat. There's a few that you can choose in this element. But for me, I just found that matching the scarf and the gloves and the boots was a really quick way to do it. And I'm pretty sure that when I do some more colouring for some of the other little girls, that I shake it up a little bit, and I think I do a scarf that matches a hat, for example. I guess we'll see. It was a little while ago when I created these. And so with this video coming through now and me doing the voiceover, my memory is not as good as it could be. You will also see here that I did pause a little bit with the pockets. I wasn't really sure what to do with those, so on the first one I coloured around them. And then in the end I decided if I added a little bit of a highlight to the pocket and then coloured it the same colour as the jacket, then everything actually worked out pretty well. There was no need to turn it into, red pockets or something that was a bit more dramatic. The other thing was there's a little piece of the shirt just coming out just inside the jacket there, and I decided to just make that a pretty neutral orange so it didn't detract from everything else as part of this little coloured image. You'll see here now that these are completed that I'm going to pop these onto the cards that have the orange and the red happy birthday, and hopefully you see what I mean by you can pull in other colours and other pieces of interest by just using an element like a sentiment in a different colour. Here I'm working bulk style, and I mentioned before doing some black denim or some just normal traditional blue denim colours. For this, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the pants on all 5 and just run through super quickly. I tend to hold multiple copics in my hand and then flick from one to the other as I'm working through. Sometimes I do put it back down on the surface like I have there, but generally I've got one in each hand and I'm kind of flicking backwards and forth quite quickly. I do find that my style of copic colouring doesn't have as much blending and it's not as perfect as people who are really, really exceptional at this. There are folks that can do things like no line colouring where you stamp in a really, really pale colour and then you just use that as a bit of a guide to essentially recreate the image. There is no way that I could do that and have it look any good, so I'm not even going to try. But putting some colour down and creating my own unique elements using alcohol markers, again, it's something that I enjoy and I don't do it often, but when I do, I always feel this big sense of accomplishment when I get to the end because I've been able to create something in a colour scheme that really does match everything that I've created in the core base of my card. Now you can see here I've skipped ahead a little bit, and I mentioned earlier that using the orange as the base layer for the card means that I can add a little bit of a pop of element in whatever colour the sentiment is. So on this one, I've added in the greys. So I've got a true kind of orange and grey with a little bit of green, it looks like. No, just grey. And for this one, I'm going to do a similar thing where I just go through, and this is just neutrals. I'm not adding any other colour to this. I'm not making anything that pops any differently than what I've had in the previous image. But you will see that I think this jacket is a much lighter colour than the previous one. So for the previous, I had the dark orange, and on this one, I'm going with a lighter kind of, I guess it's orange. It's like a yellowy orange, but that really matches in a little bit with that strip down the left-hand side rather than the dark orange of the stars. And again, so super cute, and just a little bit of variation. That one had some blue on it. These must have been done off camera, but you can see here that like bright tealy kind of blue that's matching again with the stars, and the green here, it's matching with the green of the happy birthday. So each of these all done in a color that matches the birthday, but they all look a little bit different, but a beautiful little collection. Now I'm moving on to this slightly different style, a little girl in a t-shirt and skirt. And again, it's me with the black shoes or the neutral shoes. And then I'm going to come through and I'm going to color in a denim skirt on all of these. This is definitely one of my tips if you wanted to pre-do some of your elements. Now here you can see I've got a whole bunch of these that have been die cut and stamped that are ready for if I want to do a project using these. The next step, if I wanted to be even more ready before I started a project, is if you run through and you do all of the neutral components and then maybe just leave the color of the shirt, you can then add whatever color you need to match it into the card that you're creating. So as I'm coloring these, you will start to see what I mean as I get all of the different elements done. So moving through the shoes to the skirt, to the skin tone, to the hair, and then it will just be the shirt that I will leave to then come back through and decide what color I want that will match in with the project of the day. If you're enjoying the video, it would be great if you could leave a comment below or maybe hit the like button. They are two ways that YouTube knows that the video has been enjoyed, and it helps them decide which videos to share with more viewers. If you also want to see more videos from me, then you can also hit the subscribe button. So thank you for that. Do you have a favorite stamp set that you use regularly, especially if you're someone who likes coloring in images? Now, you might use pencils, or you might use watercolor, or you might use copics or some other form of marker. I'm really curious as to what your favorite ones are to color in. I find that MFT and Lawn Fawn have a nice sort of thick border, which I really enjoy because it means I'm less likely to make any mistakes. But what are your go-to? If you could include a comment on those below, that might give me some tips on some other crafting companies or some other stamp sets that I could try out as I experiment a little bit with my card making. Now you can see here I'm getting pretty close to done. I'm not going to show all of the colouring here. I will skip on and show you the finished element with all the skin tone done, and here we go. That was perfect timing. You see what I mean by if you could create all of your stamped images and get them to that point, then the only thing you would need to colour would be the shirt, and that could match whatever project that you're working on. So here I'm adding 4 different colours to the shirts, and I have a few leftovers where it's just a white shirt at the moment, but depending on my project, I will definitely colour it in. And for this, I'm literally using the colours on that little stamped paper. Who would ever imagine that it could be so much inspiration? But I do an orange, I do a grey, I do a blue, and then I do a yellow. And you will notice that when I do this yellow, it's really quite light. In fact, it's significantly lighter than the colour in the pattern paper. So after I go through and do this, I will come back and go over it with a darker shade. That's the beauty of alcohol markers. You can change your mind. I have put another link here to a video that I think you might enjoy. Have a great day.